Hello and welcome to the bottom of it with your host Joshua Moriarty.
Hey, g'day everybody, and welcome back to the bottom of it with me, your host Joshua Moriarty. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for coming back here. I wonder where you're listening to this on. I recently just got the podcast up on Spotify. Are you there? If you are, give me a follow. That's what they say, don't they? They're always telling everyone to give them a follow. I mean, does it mean that you like something if you follow it, or is it? I'm not too sure. I would like to think that there's people who are listening to me who aren't necessarily following me but are still interested in me. So if you're out there trying to scope out whether I'm more famous or not, just because I may not have shitloads of follows doesn't mean that people aren't actually listening, okay? So whoever you are, don't stop judging me for that. Now, I'm back in Melbourne for summer. Got Miami Horror and All the Colours shows while I'm here. We're doing Grapevine tour with Miami Horror. I think that's New South Wales, Victoria, WA. And then with All the Colours, we have a Melbourne Music Week show. It's the 23rd of November for anyone who's in Melbourne. It's the first time I've ever played Melbourne Music Week, which seems crazy to me because I've nearly been in Melbourne, 15 years. I mean, I've been in LA the last few years, I suppose, but 15 years to get to play Melbourne Music Week. Well, anyway, I'm doing it, so that's exciting. Tick that off the list. Anyway, enough of that bloody ramble stuff. Just want to get to I know what you're here for. Today's guest is a recent friend of mine. It's string arranger and composer Davide Rossi. Now, I met Davide about a year ago through Danny Harrison. On that particular occasion, he was working at Danny's studio on some stuff for one of those One Direction guys' solo projects. I think it was Nile. I can't really remember. But we had a coffee and a bit of chit-chat and, got along. But I hadn't seen him since until I ran into him again the other day. And we've got chatting again, sparked up the friendship. He's an extremely funny and entertaining guy. I really like Davide. Now, we had a table tennis tournament a few weeks back at a friend of ours' house, and Davide was the only person who could beat me. It was kind of annoying, but he had that Italian flair and sort of impetuousness. He was telling me he honed his chops on the table tennis table on tour with Coldplay, and that Chris Martin was always the most competitive, and occasionally he would sort of whack his bat on the table or throw it, which I like hearing that sort of insider music goss. I understand the feeling, Chris. I have that fiery competitive streak myself. Now, Davide, he's become one of the go-to string arrangers and composers of recent years. His credits include U2, The Killers, Alicia Keys, Ed Sheeran, Goldfrapp, Neil Diamond, The Verve, Sheryl Crow, Goldfrapp, and of course Coldplay. Now, he started working with Coldplay on the Viva La Vida album in 2007. He was in the studio with them and Brian Eno. We discussed that. We talk about his years playing in Goldfrapp, who, I don't know if you know this, but they're one of my favorite bands. I fucking love Goldfrapp, so it's exciting to know he was working with them. We talk about his time working with The Verve, his own band, Black Submarine, that he started with a couple of the Verve guys. We talk about him studying with prog rock god Robert Fripp from King Crimson, a whole bunch of stuff. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen, Davide Rossi. Enjoy. I was listening to that Coldplay song in the car on the way over. Jet, 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 jet.
The hit.
The Smash. That's you, right?
That's my shit, yes.
Is that sort of like, do they commission you? Do you write it with them? Do they had the chords already? How does it work?
I kind of wrote with them because I started with the demos, that album. Chris Martin writes everything himself,
Yeah.
Comes with the chords. So I arrange. I think with arranging there is you write when you arrange.
Yeah, of course.
You create the parts.
Does it end up, do you get the songwriting credits though, and you're making fat checks for the rest of your life?
Nope. No, you don't do that. With those big bands, you can't.
Yeah.
It's a bit... No, you can't do it. It's like when lawyer gets involved...
Their lawyer's bigger and more powerful than your lawyer, right?
Well, I didn't have a lawyer at the time.
All right, then you lose instantly.
So, no. So there you go.
Do you?
Sometimes I get published, and sometimes I get points.
Yeah. Is it sort of like, would you take songwriting more than anything on the gamble that if it makes more money, you're going to end up rich down the track, or sometimes?
I am doing more songwriting now. I actually send some string loops to writers, so I write like that. I send string loops, and then they create a song with that.
And then they have to pay you the...
Well, then we split.
Yeah, who are you sending them to?
Well, I've been doing stuff. Actually, I just wrote 4 songs with Jack Savoretti, which is an English guy.
Okay.
It's up and coming. Well, it's not really up and coming. It's his 4th album. But it's because
that's still up and coming for some,
it's still kind of up and coming.
People, yeah.
No, he's I started writing with him and with this team of people. So I sent string loops, and then they use them to write a song.
Where are you sort of coming up with this? It's just random stuff that you're just playing around with?
Yeah, stuff like I have leftovers from stuff that I haven't used.
Yeah, so I guess you could take, if you wrote strings for someone's song, they didn't end up putting out, you can just keep those strings for yourself.
Yeah, that's what happens. Sometimes I do stuff and then they don't want it, and so I keep it.
Yeah, you were telling me about last time I saw you, when I met you at Danny's, you were doing a One Direction, like one of those guys things, wasn't it? I can't remember which one.
I can't remember. I think I'd done 2.
And they just
Neil Horan. He didn't use it. That's a good point.
He didn't use the song, or didn't use
I think the song didn't come out.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes you do pop stuff and then things don't come out.
I think that's what everyone says about it, even just with the pop writing, you don't really...
But then you have to be careful when you get paid, because you have to ask, well, was it used? And so you have to ask, you know.
Do you have, your manager kind of chases people down now?
Yeah, I have a manager who chases people down,
Yeah. And so with Coldplay, were you in the studio with Brian Eno when you're doing that?
Before I actually came in, I was already there.
Right, okay.
So with that album, with Viva La Vida, that one, I started literally, I think they started a week before. So Chris always writes. He's writing constantly, so he already comes with songs, you know?
Yeah.
With lyrics and chords, and then he breaks it down with the band. So I came kind of as an extra musician, and then I ended up staying I spent they did 18 months, and I must have been like half of the time in and out. Yeah, it was a long session.
I've spent 18 months on things, but not like that.
Yeah.
Where you're in the studio.
They take their time. Now I think they're a bit faster. No, but they still take some time.
And what, you met them through Goldfrapp? Is that what you're saying? So you're on tour?
I was touring. We were supporting them in 2006.
Yeah, I was watching some of those Goldfrapp videos, the live stuff today. Seeing you on the guitar, playing the strings.
Guitar, and then violin, obviously. And then I played everything with them.
Yeah, and that was from 2000 to...
From 2000 to... I stopped in 2013.
Yeah, and that was to do Black Submarine with the Verve guys? Who else is in that?
Well, I started with the Verve. After Viva La Vida, I sort of went in studio with the Verve to do their last album, basically, that they were recording. And then I joined them live as well.
Yeah.
So
and
that was that was cool.
Yeah, and then
and I'll stop there. So many things you can't say.
Well, come on, you can.
It's a crazy bunch. It was, I suppose.
Well, I guess of the fact that they broke up
4 or 5 times.
Yeah, and then getting back together.
It's a bit sad. They were an amazing band, but they couldn't get along. They couldn't sort it out.
When I saw Richard Ashcroft play at, I can't remember what festival it was back in Australia. That's okay. And he came on. He was on at the same time as Kanye West, and his crowd wasn't very big. and he played for about 10 minutes, and then he sort of had a weird, like, aggro kind of ran up to the crowd, shook his fists a few times.
When was this?
I reckon that you may have been there with Goldfrapp.
Yeah, I remember that gig.
That same.
He was doing United Nations of Sound.
Yeah.
That was the name of the project.
Yeah, and then he sort of
didn't go that well. Well, you know, I think he just did that right after the Verve. I think, you know, and that was the first time he went to Australia. But at the same time, I think most people. I mean, obviously he's a great singer, songwriter. I mean, he's a great songwriter and he's an amazing singer.
I love him.
But I guess the Verve is the thing, you know. It's like every time. I mean, he'll do well eventually. He has already done well. I mean, you know, it's. But you know, every time you come from a big band like that, and then you want to be like a solo artist, it's tough, you know. It's super tough.
I think it would be the hardest thing.
Yeah. Plus, the Verve was really special. I think. I mean, and that is not criticism because I don't mind it at all. I think he's a great songwriter. It just does, when he's on his own, he's a little bit more, I would say, average. I mean, the Verve just brought his stuff to a different level completely.
It misses a little bit of
and
the
I mean,
magic.
it was tough, I suppose, but the whole personality is going on, but that's what makes a great band.
Well, that's the thing, though. So, what do you do? Do you stay in a relationship that's tumultuous like that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's easier to say from the outside, you know. I mean, I only met them at the end of their career, which was already ended a few times before. But I think the thing is that bands. They have a lot of issues, you know, and you either sort them out and then you live. I mean,
of course,
and then you build on that. I mean, the Verve could have been a huge band.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, they were.
Yeah, they were at that time, but it's definitely petered off as the years have gone by. There's a lot of people who remember, but it's not. But
the gigs we did in 2008 were just like incredible. I mean. I could say that we were. I say we.
Did you play?
I play with them.
Yeah, you were playing live with them for
just a few festivals because I was still touring with Goldfrapp, but it was just so special.
Did you do that Rock Worked one or whatever?
No, I did V festivals in England. I did the Glastonbury, and then a few festivals in Spain.
Yeah,
and then we did some Maid of Hell session, which was great. And then there was like a few more TV stuff.
Yeah.
So I couldn't just join. I mean, it was at the end of their...
I'm just thinking, though, of you sort of, you know, with a band like The Verve and then a band like Goldfrapp and then Coldplay, but always being the person...
in the back.
Outside of all of it.
Yeah, I never was the signed artist. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, but do you...
Now I embrace the non-signed feature. Now I just work with so many people.
Yeah, and how is it all? It's all word of mouth. Are you an Instagram guy? Are you posting videos all the time? What do
you mean?
Well, how are you? How does the work just keeps coming to you? Obviously,
well,
right? You're getting.
I mean, when I joined Goldfrapp, I moved from Italy to England when I was early 20s, and then it took me a while to get into the scene, so to speak.
Yeah. And
I really didn't chase it either. I just went there to live there and to do my thing and then eventually I was living in Bath or near Bath, and I met Will Gregory, who was the second half of Goldfrapp, and then they invited me to do the first album. And I was never available for the sessions for some reason, I remember. But then when they put the band together, I joined. And then it was this album, Fell Mountain, which is kind of a classic album. Great.
Yeah, man, that band's incredible.
Then since then I just kept staying with them for the next. I was in the live band for 13 and a half years.
Were you playing on those records as well?
No, I never really played. Well, actually, I played in one record. The one called
I like that it's harder for you to
Head
remember.
First.
Yeah,
I
that
think.
was one of the
That was the sort of Hall & Oates sort of 80s.
Yeah.
Because every album was a different genre.
I
mean, Goldfrapp, the guy who was doing the arranging, who's doing all the stuff is Will. I mean, even though they write 50-50 in an Ian Allison, it's not like he's the producer and she's just the singer. No? It's just like a very 50-50 collab.
It's funny though how completely behind the scenes he is. I don't even think people would
No,
know.
I mean,
that
he did the first tour and then he didn't like it.
So he stopped even touring with...
He only toured the first time.
Right, because I was wondering when I was watching those videos today which one he was, and I didn't think that I recognized him.
People thought I was.
That's not a bad idea though, that, you know,
Well,
being in the band...
that was a plus and again, I was in that band very much, even though I wasn't signed. I feel like that was definitely one of my kind of you call it musical families. You know?
Yes, of course.
So that was definitely a musical family for me. And that was when they started. You know, every band has got their own quirks. You know, and that was definitely one of the quirks. The fact that they wouldn't tour, it created some problems. But eventually they found some kind of compromise. Then, you know, Alison was very much she would decide who was in the... I mean, she would just, you know, because it was up to her to tour it, you know.
Of course, yeah, she needs to get on.
She needs to get on with everyone, you know. I mean, but that worked, you know. And then, I mean, it's still a great band. Since I haven't done it, they did already 2 tours, and I mean, it's great.
And why did you kind of move on from that?
Because it was a lot of work, and but at the same time, I mean, it felt like to me I was playing live. I mean, after you did 2, 3, 4 times the world tour, you kind of get tired. And I started to do more and more studio work. Like Coldplay really took me to a different level, so I started work in the studio. So it was almost like counter-producing for me to be on tour with a band that I didn't have any artistic input, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's definitely a part of it. I think that's it. Once you have...
I mean, at some point I was playing live with Goldfrapp, doing major tours, and then playing in the studio with Coldplay. So with one band, I would be totally involved in the live thing, but not at all, or very, very little in the studio. And then with one band, I was totally involved in the studio and not at all in the live thing. I mean, only a few times I play with Coldplay.
Yeah, I saw that they said
because they are very much, you know, it's the band, you know, it's the 4 of them, which is very.
You stand off in the shadows sometimes.
Well, there is a lot of tape. There is a lot of me on tape every time. So.
Oh, they have you in the backing track.
Oh, of course.
It said online when I was looking you up today, you did a Robert Fripp from King Crimson guitar course.
I was studying with him for 4 years.
But with guitar though, yeah?
Yeah, well, I went with guitar. Actually, I went just with nothing, and then he said, well, you should pick up the guitar. And then I picked up the guitar, so I said, no, stick with the violin. So I kind of learned, it was just a good... It was interesting because he was an interesting man and then an interesting musician, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
he's one of the most badass guitar players.
Yeah, exactly. And what was cool for me at the time, I was a little bit more muso in a way, which I didn't know what muso is until Brian Eno once told me, "You fucking muso," in the studio, because I was just playing. According to him, when one plays too many notes I don't know, it was funny. It was actually funny that time. But it was a lovely insult from him, which is always kind of a compliment in some ways. And then, I was a bit more interested in that kind of thing, that because I come from the classical, so to study with Robert was like good because he had that classical approach to rock and roll.
Right.
It's very technical, you know. And
where did you meet him? How did that?
I just went to. Well, I met friends who were going to these courses, and then I just got in one in Berlin in 1990, and then I did it for 4 years. Pretty intense.
Yeah.
Everywhere. I would go to Europe, US, you know.
Like following him around?
Well, you know, you did. I was still studying, so I would just do like, I don't know, 3-4 seminars a year, which will last like a week, and then sometimes there were seminars that lasted 3 months, sometimes a year, which obviously was also a lot of work at distance. But so yeah, I just was I was into that kind of scene, you know. And then he actually suggested me to move to England. I mean, then I moved to England, and that's how I got there, and that's how I met Peter Hamill, Van de Graaff Generator.
Okay, I don't know.
Do you know that guy?
No, I don't think I know. Okay.
He's a cool. I mean, that band is kind of. And so I started to do stuff for him in the studio, not with him, but he had a studio, so I would do sessions in the studio, which was Terra Incognita, which was a studio in Bath. Pretty legendary. This is kind of, now is music history. You know?
Yeah.
He's still doing stuff, but that studio is not there anymore. That's in Walker Street, which is kind of a very music street in Bath.
After we watched the Mo Wax documentary the other night, you were saying that's, you know, set in that time when you'd just moved to...
Yeah, I moved to England at that time, and it was like... it was... Because England is not the most obvious place. Mm-hmm. There's a lot going on, but it's also very kind of rough around the edges.
Yeah, that's what I mean? That's what you were saying.
I mean, it's all out... The English are great because they really make out a lot out of nothing, or so it seems, you know, and it's so cool.
And started playing, how old were you when you started playing the violin?
Violin I started at 10, so relatively late. But I think I've been playing music since I can remember. So when I was 3, 4, just picking up anything.
What, piano, guitar stuff?
Yeah, like keyboard, piano.
And Italian,
flute.
Italian music more or?
No, I mean, there was not really Italian music. I think I was just like, my background was pretty poor, so I just had these instruments at home, you know, and I would just watch telly and then replicate whatever I could hear.
My favorite thing is to watch telly and just do my practice at the same time.
But it's funny because in the 70s, and we had a lot of music in television in Italy, a lot of music from England. So you know, you could really, there were like really a lot of music problems with Bowie, AC/DC, Roxy music, but like all afternoons. It was kind of crazy. So you, as a kid, you could just watch that kind of stuff.
But do you think that Italy has an influence on what you have done or what you do?
Well, I was more into the Anglo-Saxon music, but also when I started...
But you must notice as you get older, maybe there's certain things that have had...
Oh, yeah. I mean, but Italy for music was great. In the 40s, 50s, and 60s, just outstanding.
Yeah.
I mean, there is so much going on.
Especially
with film composers.
Yeah, with violin.
But then, of course, studying conservatory, I really got into Vivaldi, who's still really one of my favorite composers right now. And, I mean, there obviously... I mean, music kind of... Italy's... It kind of starts there, instrumental music, and then, you know, develops into the... I mean, yeah, I remember studying, actually, in England. I studied musicology and stuff, and music history, so... Yeah, Italy was good. I mean, now, I don't know, apparently there is a renaissance. But at the same time, I was always into, as a kid, you know, the sort of music from England, because that's what was coming... through, you know, or English music, like, you know, like we had Bowie, I mean, or, you know, Roxy music. I remember watching Madness, all that kind of stuff. You know? Madness,
fuck, those guys are crazy.
Great, yeah.
Yeah, that song, My House in the Middle of the Street's got about 5 key changes within the same...
They were so clever.
It's so clever,
I mean, it's just like... And actually, I remember I wanted to become a keyboard player because of that. And then I went to do an exam to get in the conservatory, because you do that when you're 10 in Italy, because you start with secondary school. The conservatory is a bit different then. And then I went, and then the organ teacher suggested I should play violin, because there was more work, which is obviously...
Do you think in violin now?
I like it. I don't know if I think in violin, but I definitely use it for, it's my instrument. But I now play viola, cello, contrabass, and that's how I build and record my orchestra.
Yeah, so tell me a little about that. You sort of write all of the...
Everything, yeah. So I do it like that. I record everything myself. I've been using, I used to do it when I started playing bands. So when I was doing the conservatory, and then at 15, I started playing bands in Italy, you know. So I would play the keyboard. But then when I started playing more and more the violin in bands, so that kind of was my thing, to get the violin to play with bands. So there were not many people at the time. And then I would just try to find ways, so that meant finding the right amplifier, the right piezo, whatever that is, And then I started to do more studio recordings. I was in this band. I started being bands would get mini deals, and then record more and more. And then I started to, as you do, you just multi-track yourself,
Of course.
And then eventually I just multi-track, and then create small orchestra, just violins. Then I got a viola, and then I do it with that, and then I started to do it like that. And then I had this electric violin, and I used it to do cello and double bass, because they had like a big range of 7 strings. I found. Actually, I remember with this Italian band, I was touring in Holland, Germany. We were kind of a world music.
Okay.
So we did 2 records, Real World, which was in Bath. Funnily enough, I ended up living not far from it when I moved. But basically, then we started to tour abroad, because there was interest, for what we were doing was kind of original, and we were one of the first independent band to be signed.
What's the name of the band?
It was called Mau Mau. It was really early 1990, and that was like we got signed with EMI, and we were kind of the first independent band to get signed with a major, so that allowed us to do records at Real World. And then we started touring Holland and Belgium and whatever, France, Germany, and then we were supporting for a bunch of gigs Pogues.
The Pogues?
Yeah.
What's
and then
his name?
I met this guy, David Coulter, who was playing this electric violin, and I went to Birmingham and bought one of those. And that kind of changed.
I guess that was the thing in the 90s a little bit. The electric violin would have been pretty new, and I guess...
Totally new. I mean, nowadays, it's kind of... There is a lot more going on.
Vanessa May, that was that woman.
That was later.
A little later, yeah.
Oh my
but
God.
She kind of made it.
Yeah, that's not exactly the inspiration. I was more like into violin. There were a few violin players who did, pioneer the violin, like Sugarcane, what was his name? Sugarcane Harris. Zappa used to have violinists. Sugarcane Harris, he used to have Jalou Ponty, the guy from Paris. He used to have El Shankar, the Indian guy.
Okay, yeah.
And a couple of more. Then there was like, Curved Air. There was like Eddie Jobson. I don't know, was he in Curved Air? Eddie Jobson was this great violin player also. Yeah. 70s,
But they wouldn't have been playing electric violin.
They were playing acoustic violin with a Marcus Berry at the time was the only. There were just a few options, Yeah. It was kind of totally. David Cross with King Crimson, obviously. Right.
Did you get into that super freaky, lots of effects kind of thing?
Yes, I have. I'm actually getting a pedal board right now, but I did a lot of stuff like that. Yeah.
I think there's something about that when you're younger and you're sort of there's just this thirst or this desire to just be
Yeah.
as wild.
Well,
as
I
you.
was using the electric. I mean, with Goldfrapp, I was playing electric violin, and I had loads of effects, you know. So I will double all this orchestras, but I will do also a lot of stuff which was kind of very non-violinistic in a way.
Yeah, sure.
So the first album with Coldplay, for instance, there is a lot of stuff that is guitar sounding and is actually me, or ambient.
Okay.
And same with the
I was thinking
Verve.
about that. I was listening to that on the way over.
Same with the Verve. But now usually people hire me to do string arranging more, like, but I still like, I mean, I'm kind of going back into that with the electric violin.
Do you sort of feel like you have a sound or a voice when you're...
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, something that's...
There is definitely a sound.
something specific
I think
for
you
yours.
just develop it with time. And I think actually one of the greatest, well, I remember, you know, with Fripp, he was very schematic in his way of telling, you should develop some technique, a sound or a voice, and being able to play everything. So these three things will allow you to do stuff.
I guess there is that, yeah, you've kind of got to learn everything so that you can play less, but you kind of got to go all the way out there so that you that you can come back.
Yeah.
I was like that with guitar for a long time, and then these
I think
days,
everyone gets to that nerdy stage. Unless, I mean, yeah, I suppose so.
it's interesting to hear about nerdy.
But then I guess when I started playing with bands in England, I really learned to play a lot.
You unlearn.
I mean, I just play, you know, more tasteful rather than technical. You know?
Do you still sort of crave the opportunity to get freaky like that anymore?
No, I get freaky in different ways. Not in that. I mean, who knows? Actually, you always change. I think you always change, but I never. Although I study with maybe one of the most prog rock gods. I mean, I'm definitely not that type of. I mean, I like to investigate on that, but I also studied with contemporary, classic. I mean, like I studied with Stockhausen as well. You know, that was.
What is it?
Stockhausen.
Okay.
Karl-Heinz.
You're in another
German
world.
composer. Yeah, pretty, fucking.
You're in another world to me, Davide.
Well, but Stockhausen influenced a lot of the. I mean, there wouldn't be electronic music as we know it without Stockhausen.
Right, no shit.
Yeah, he
He
influenced the whole German, you know, Kraftwerk thing, and all bands like Can, Popelwood, they all come from that area.
Sure.
And they were totally influenced by him. And even Zappa, influenced by Stockhausen, Varese, all these classical modern composers.
We need to have a sit down.
I was a big Zappa fan.
Yeah, yeah. You got to play me
I
more
still
stuff.
am.
What was the thing you were playing me the other day? The Italian composer, the guy who wasn't.
Stelvio Cipriani is a film composer from Italy.
That's your kind of fave thing at the moment.
Well, but he's a great composer.
Do you still have? Did you have that kind of same listening appetite that you had when you were young?
Oh yeah, I listen to music almost all the time.
What, and all different types, everything?
Yes. Yeah, at the moment I'm into cumbia.
Okay. How long's that been going on for?
Kind of a couple of years. Well, I don't know, maybe less than that.
Yeah, I guess this, you know...
There is this new, I love Peruvian, Colombian, South American tropical music like cumbia, and it's just amazing stuff there. And there is like this all new, well, it's not that new, but it's, if you consider from the 90s, you know, this new is kind of traditional music but done in modern, it's just crazy, like psychedelic.
From the 90s?
From the 90s and then going on now, it's really cool stuff.
I would like to hear that.
It's amazing.
Have you played out there?
No, I've never been there. I would love to go.
Yeah, I feel like it's easy to sort of... I'm the same, you're always on your own musical destiny, basically. Like you're not necessarily listening to whatever music is trendy right now. You just find yourself...
No, I have to say, I kind of... I mean, I like pop music, and I'm into what's going on right now and what comes out, but more than I used to, in fact.
Is that because you're working on with
Yeah.
a lot of pop
Yeah,
artists?
right. Yeah, I kind of learned that a bit from Chris Martin, because he's always like he always knows what's going on.
Yeah, well,
he's very interested in he's very much into what
that's how the sound
into.
the sound of that band has changed so much over the years.
Yeah.
I think for that reason, it's sort of become very now.
Yeah, I think so. They still have their sound, but it's very, very influenced.
Yeah, as soon as he opens his mouth.
Huh?
As soon as he opens his mouth, it sounds like them, because it's Chris.
Oh man,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. Well, like Johnny's guitar, but everyone, they are quite. I mean, Chris is the sucker for pop. Having said that, he likes a lot of different stuff.
Sure.
He's into classical, he's into everything. But he's very much into pop music. They are more like, I would say, Guy and Will, and they're just like more into the. I mean, they have their own way. I mean, I think they ground him a bit. I don't know. I mean, it's difficult to judge, even though I worked with them for so many years.
Yeah, of course.
But I just think they are a really great combo, They make it work.
Do you have a sort of musical ethic? Is there something that you always try to do, not do, challenge yourself in certain ways,
No.
not do other things?
I don't think so. I mean, I guess the only ethic I have is like, I always treat everything as the next thing, as the best thing I can do, and
So always trying to better yourself.
well,
in
it's
a
not
way.
even. Yeah, I guess in a way, so to speak. Yeah, I think that's correct. So I'm very driven, very, very hungry for doing. I mean, it's just it's so good.
Is there still something that you haven't done that you sort of wanting to do, a project, an album?
Well, I have artists I love to work with, but also I'm writing more now. This is great because I always been collaborating. So no, I mean, writing was more like sessioning, which is also kind of
writing for yourself.
Yeah.
What's the vibe? What's it going to be? Is it just going to be?
I actually did an album with this guy, Black Summering, out of the ashes of the Verve. It was me, Nick McCabe, the guitarist.
I was listening to it in the car on the way.
Cy Jones, the bass player, and then we did this project which didn't really pick up.
But did you guys pursue it very much? I was looking
5 years.
Oh, really? Okay.
But at the same time, it was just one of those things that it was so hard. I mean, I don't know, it's just like, at the time, but even now, bands, it's just so hard to do anything.
I think you've got to just keep doing it.
Yeah, but I just think it was very hard emotionally, and then it didn't go anywhere, which is difficult. It was just fighting against too much, and I think, it just became like too much pain and very.
I think it's harder as you get older though as well.
Exactly.
Trying to break a
Plus,
new
everyone's
band.
got kids, and and then at the same time, we also had a management who kind of, sorry to say, kind of killed it.
I think that's very common.
It is very common
with a lot of bands. You'll sort of go,
but also it was a complicated combo. You have to also take on your responsibility, which was good in a way, but also in some ways, it's just difficult.
Yeah. Did you ever want to be a big rock star, famous, everyone know your name?
I think everyone does. But at the same time, obviously you just want to reach as many people as you want, And it's funny, when I was, it's funny because since I was playing in these bands in Italy and then really break it with some Italian bands and then go to England and then Goldfrapp, and that kind of becomes worldwide sort of phenomenon. But then you got Coldplay, as big as it gets, but then I cannot join them on stage. Then the Verve, and that's crazy great,
Yeah.
But never my band, And then I thought Black Submarine, no, it didn't work. So now I'm kind of, I can do that by collaborating with loads of different artists. The last 5-6 years, I think I must have done like 200 albums.
Really?
At least touched, not all of them. And then some of them were, U2, Killers,
Give us a few more names.
Neil Diamond, Sheryl Crow, Alicia Keys.
It's a pretty good hit list.
There is that's big, heavy duty, sort of, what else? I don't know. And then also like other, different genres, like so many different people and pop stuff, Ed Sheeran.
And that fulfills your...
One Direction. I actually did one song for them.
Do you hang out with them when you do that, or is it usually just being emailed to you?
Well, nowadays I don't even see them. U2, I never really met them at all. I only got feedback through the
producer.
Through the producer, yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Roixop is another band I worked a lot with them.
Those guys are sick.
It's great. But with them I also play live.
It's so funny to think of those bands getting the string player to do something and then just getting the producer to do all the talking for them. I just personally couldn't.
But that's why some artists it's much better to be hands-on, like Chris or Alicia Keys. The same. I went there in New York, their place. But a lot of the time, it's just so good to do it remotely nowadays because the technology allows it so much, and you can really be actually hands-on remotely. It really doesn't. It creates. Roixop. The first 2 albums I did, I never really saw them, and then I met them in Copenhagen. And were playing a gig, and then that's it.
It's pretty wild that you can do a whole string, string section.
Yeah, it took me a while to learn the niche, which is kind of.
And you can just do it anywhere, set up in any room anywhere in the world.
Yeah. Viva La Vida was done in a bedroom in England. And parts in New York, parts in their studio in London, but very, very, very cheaply, very cheap.
I guess the reason I started this podcast was sometimes just feeling like we're all wasting our time just fluffing around making music. So, like sometimes selfishly, it feels like. But what's your take on that?
I do not agree at all. I don't. For me, music is like it's like a religion almost. It's like a real call. It's sort of. It's a life-changing. It's a way of life. It really is. It sounds a bit naff, but it is. And when in America they call it the entertainment industry, to me there is very little entertainment. It is very entertaining, but there is, to me, music is a tool to develop societies. And I know you can do it with a song, but look at what the Beatles did, And I've been lucky, I think, with a few songs I've done. I think like a song like Viva La Vida has an impact.
Absolutely.
As an impact, there is a meaning. I remember I was studying with Stockhausen, which is like the most serious composer well, he's not there. He died, but it was like the most insane thing I did. One of the most, anyway. And then I really realized that I wanted to do, among that kind of weirdness, doing that weird music, I realized that pop music has got it all, you know. You can really make like a really incredible piece of artwork in 3 minutes with lyrics that really, you know, move people, you know. I think music, I think really music is something that evolve consciousness or bring consciousness to the masses. It can lower it, but it can definitely higher it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think it's just when you're going through those periods, sometimes just making things, you know, obsessively in your home studio or by yourself and just feeling like...
Well, I think there is something about that too. I mean, I am lucky because I work with so many big artists, and I mean, even for me now to work with so many people all over the world, you know, Australia, England, America, Germany, Italy, France, and then you just connect with these people, you know, and then eventually some of that stuff is going to be heard by so many hundreds of thousands of people. I mean, that's kind of awesome. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about it, you know. Some people, you know, start making music because they hear your stuff and then they write you about and it's like, it's passion, man. And I think it's, unless you, I mean, you can mess around, but you know, I think it's a pretty meaningful and great thing to do, in fact.
I definitely agree.
And very constructive. Instead, and a lot of the shit that going on, you know, in this day and age, and always been going on, you know.
Yeah, of course.
It's kind of one of the greatest form of arts.
I think thinking of it as a religion is probably a good way.
Well, it's a bit. It's a bit maybe, but it's definitely something. For me, it's better, in fact, because it's kind of formless. I mean, I'm not a religious person at all. But I kind of like the spirituality of stuff, you know, and I think it's music is a universal language. I mean, when I was a kid, I would listen to songs in English, and I didn't even know the lyrics, and then I thought that was the greatest thing, you know.
Yeah, of course. That
you can possibly experience, you know, and music, even though now. It's become like a much more commodity, you know. It's much more. It's still got. I mean, there is a. I mean, I think it's like food, you know. Without music, people will be a little bit.
I think it's just seeing the sort of getting deeper into the industry. Sometimes I find I get a little more disgusted by certain parts of it.
There is that.
But then the beautiful parts of it, I just. I'm obsessed with it.
But I think, the industry, I think sometimes if you just do it in an amatorial way, then maybe you feel, oh, I'm just faffing around, and it's kind of a bit self-indulgence. And I think that's very important. But when you go out and become part of the industry, then there is like, you like serving you're just going to something that is going to reach more people. I think it's both ways. That's why the music in the 60s and 70s is so cool, because the industry wasn't so much governed by A&R, who decides now what's cool or not, which kind of makes no fucking sense, because they didn't know. It was better when it was just like investors, like in the 60s or 70s, will sign anything because they didn't fucking know. And then something like Pink Floyd will come out, or Zappa, or I don't know.
Yeah, I remember reading Zappa talking about saying that.
Oh, I love that. For me, that guy is insane. I mean, even I think his interviews are even more interesting than his music sometimes.
Yeah, well, he just seems like it's always floating through him at all times. It's like a musical river that's just flowing.
Well, it's just I think he was a very creative person, very kind of quirky and weird, and he managed to make a career in spite of all, and he started at the right time, and you know, but it kept going, and it became very influential in many ways. And I think he predicted a lot of stuff that is happening right now.
Yeah. Do you struggle for inspiration at all? You sort of have a similar thing where it's always there for you?
I think he's always there. I think with time you kind of learn to tap into it. So it becomes like so it's like, if you do something all the time, it comes to you. So I think I'm always having ideas. It's easy. It's almost like it's kind of easy. But it took, 20 years to become easy,
I've never had writer's block ever in my life. I've always had. Yeah. You'll be sitting on the aeroplane and just the bell will go off or something.
I think good people are really the best people are the ones that make it for. Like Nick Cave now is probably doing the best shows he ever did. And
saw him there. Were you there the other night?
I wasn't. I'm feeling a bit. I could go. I could have gone, but I forgot because I'm such a loser. I don't go out. But yeah, he's,
Yeah, well, he seems like he's just kind of getting better, and there's nothing really getting in his way anymore.
So good. A few of them. Like Johnny Cash did that. Neil Young is a bit like that. All these classic things,
Well, there's no reason why, as you get older, you should get worse.
I think some people get stuck into being relevant, and I work with a lot of bands who are unfortunately slave of that mentality, and I think that's a little bit limiting.
Yeah, you're best to never ever be
especially
relevant.
when you made it that large, you could really take it.
Well, that's the ones that.
But it's difficult when you're caught into that. It's difficult.
Yeah, I could imagine. That's someone like Nick Cave doesn't seem like he's ever really.
He doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, he's never been relevant. He just ends up becoming an
icon. He's always been Nick Cave, but he was relevant at some point. But then when he became less relevant, he just became his own relevant.
Yeah, it kind of becomes better. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Davide Rossi. What a guy. It was a real pleasure to sit down and talk with him. I think I've got a project with another friend of mine, Moriarty, and we were discussing with Davide getting him to do some strings for us and maybe starting the band. So very excited to work with him and see what he comes up with. I think he's brilliant. Now, if you haven't checked out his band, Black Submarine, also go back and have a listen to Viva La Vida. Now you got a little bit of inside information. Check out the Goldfrapp album Head First. Just keep your eye out for Davide. You'll probably hear him on a bloody One Direction song if you're that way inclined. You too, one of those people. I've included a few links in the description for the podcast, so check it out. There'll be some stuff, some of the things we talked about in the interview. Get on board. Hey, thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for coming back. I'll be back in a few weeks' time with more. Cheers. Take care. See you later.